Okay, so I already told you that JFC and swing are two names that could be used interchangeably, and you can research this even more. Swing components to begin with, something that we definitely should study before doing anything fancy, would be this set of swing components. As you can see that many of these are actually names of classes that we'll be using from that library. So for instance, JButton, JFrame, JLabel, and so forth. These classes, as you can see, have a prefix uppercase J in front of them. That's sort of like the historical the fact of their participation or belonging to the JFC type of library. So and it's kind of helpful because when you see the uppercase J in front of the class name, you should quickly recognize that this is really a name of the class which is part of the swing library. So they all have those things. So some examples, and some of these, like I said, I'd like to cover in more detail before we move on to other types of controls. Like for instance, there are fancier types of controls. For instance, like a directory tree, or a complex grid, or even a gadget which can run as an interpreter for HTML web page and display HTML in it. So there are many different controls which are far more complex than those, but we need to get familiar with these very quickly. So buttons, straightforward, just push button, obvious choice for user interface in many cases. The windows are represented by frames. So typically, you know that the window has, if you look closely, right? If you build a window, if you look at a window, which this is an example of a window right here, right? So we can say that it has a frame, and frame has borders. It has the title bar right here, right? So right here I'm running an application that has the title bar. It has some other icons built into the title bar. It has a set of standard controls to minimize, maximize, and close the window. It has this like a toolbar like ribbon with user controls, and typically, and by the way, there's a little bit of a menu here as well, right? So it has all these components, but essentially the window is established by its frame, right? So the window frame typically includes the title bar and the border. And the border can be flat, 3D, invisible, which means like it has no width. So there could be different windows, but windows basically, every window, all this, thing that look like a window is essentially determined by its frame. So that's why it's not a surprise that the actual name for top level window, the name of the class is actually JFrame and not window, right? There is a window, but the JFrame is as close as you normally get to the actual window application. So typically there is one window that we would like to recognize as the top level window, which behaves basically as if you close that specific window, the entire application closes. So the application can have multiple windows, but typically one window is designated to be the main application window, number one, and number two, if you exit that or close that particular window, then that means the end of the application execution. All right, labels are simple text display. Text display areas which could use different fonts, different font types and sizes, but still just the primary reason is to display some text on the screen. The menu bar, of course, is the top level to represent the menus and menu items. The panel is very important control. Typically, it's used as it has multiple purposes, by the way. So the J panel is the general purpose, but also multi-purpose. Number one reason to have a panel, which is simply just a frame, okay? Just a frame, just an area which you can resize on your window. And it typically, first of all, it typically serves as a container for other controls. There could be different groups of your controls on the window, and you want to group them, and you can have the panel, and that panel could have its own little title, but typically you need the panel to organize certain controls. Number two, you may want to display a custom drawing, right? Remember that example with Scratchpad application that you want to allow your user to push down the mouse and start drawing lines or shapes or something. So typically that custom drawing is made inside a JPanel. In other words, JPanel can be extended by your own class so that you can write some of your own code in that class which extends the JPanel using inheritance and provides custom drawing, right? You can even design your own text input box that basically responds to every keystroke, to mouse clicks and other things. And how do you create your customized text box? You would typically choose JPanel as the starting point and customize it enough so that it starts to behave as a different control. Now, JPanel would allow you to use 3D and 2D graphic libraries inside of it to implement the custom drawing. So it has really very nice facilities that allow you to customize many things or also group things together. So this is something. Typically, what happens is that you create a window, and the next step that you do typically is just to add the JPanel, which will encapsulate all the controls. It's just highly advisable not to keep your widgets, the user interface controls, directly on the form or window, but rather have them all belong to a certain panel. Okay, so this is just a container for us to begin with. Text area is multi-line text input, and text field is a single-line text input. So we're all familiar with those. Of course, there are also checkboxes and radio buttons and dials, and like I said, grids and other types of controls, which we will explore. Now, besides those highly customizable windows, there's also a J-option pane class that allows you to create a simple input dialog with, like, asking user for a single input value and providing ways to describe what that input is. Just basically a very simple dialog that asks the user for a single input, and also the message dialog. So perhaps what we can do first is perhaps this is for us officially, this will be our week 10. So we're just going to create a new project, right? So just going to say create new project. And the question is, what does it take to create a project which will support graphical user interface in Java? Nothing. It's still the same Java application. No effort on your part. It's just a matter of importing the right controls, and they will do the right thing for you. So so let's see. So this is something that we're going to keep as for now. I'll just say this is going to be week 10 project, and I will store it under my CIS 257. So this will be week 10 simple dialogue demonstration. So just create that. This will be very short demonstration. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to close any windows I have already opened, which is open since last week. But here I've created week 10, and I have here a class which only includes the main method, which is kind of all right. So I'll just simplify everything that I have here so far, and let me just try this J option pane, right? J option pane, so I can just try using it. Actually, let me just do try this show input dialog. Right there. Okay, so here it may need some additional imports, and of course as you can see that the J option pane comes from the swing swing package inside Java X, Java extended set of classes. Okay, and so this show input dialog box is of course the static method, but let me just see if I can let me see if I with no arguments or with components, so let me do a. So what I did here is that I just provided the there are multiple constructors for this input dialog, but one of them just basically takes a string in. So if I run this simple application, it basically gives user a chance to enter some text here, and if I click OK, it will basically return back the value, right? So I can basically use this simple way to communicate with the user. Like we found here, there are multiple ways to display different icons for your dialogues, and this is one of the Oracle tutorials, and I'm not really going to explore that more because it has different options here so that you can display different types of icons inside the dialog and so forth. So this is a very simple tutorial, and you can basically practice with these simple dialog box very simple. So for instance, this example here will give you a chance to create this type of a dialog, so you can see that there's there are optional parameters to specify what kind of buttons you want. Basically you provide your the return type comes through the through these options, and it just like has all kinds of parameters in there. So a very simple set of dialogues. I'm just going to bypass this and just move on with our presentation talking about the actual windows. So the actual windows contain the actual windows in Swing and gadgets like buttons and text boxes are all managed to the hierarchy of classes. Okay, and so they're all share common behavior and common interface to the events that they can generate. So for instance, pluggable look and feel allows you, a programmer, to organize your interface in a consistent manner, right? So that, for instance, you can create very look-alike controls which will represent checkboxes and radio buttons and other types of controls. Keystroke handling, like the keyboard input directed to these widgets, is going to be managed in a very uniform and straightforward type of manner. You can control the borders and other 3D or flat appearances of your gadgets in a very consistent manner. You can tell your controls to display the tooltips when the user hovers the mouse on top of these controls, right? And you can also have the scrolling support for whatever widgets should be scrollable in case if they don't fit on the window, inside the visible window view. So more on that later on. So, but this is the quick look at the swing component hierarchy, and we can say that both gadgets and windows in fact are part of the same hierarchy. By the way, unfortunately on this specific graphic the arrows should be reversed to indicate the actual inheritance diagram, right? If you try to use UML, you'd be able to basically you'd be able to draw this diagram, but the arrows should be going in a different direction. This is from our textbook, and I didn't modify this diagram, but for the UML requirements, the arrows should be directed in the opposite direction. All right, but you can see the J-frame, which is responsible for handling the entire window, and the label and text field and button are all deriving themselves from the container, which is an abstract class, which in itself derives from the component. What it means really what it means to us, that all of these visible pieces, visible gadgets and shapes that become visible at runtime, basically almost all of them represent a single small window which can receive messages, right? So this is very important, because internally, as you can see, parts of graphical user interface is just a set of components which are basically implementing different types of behavior. So more on that later on, but it's good to know that we have this is the philosophy behind this user interface control organization, and we're going to be seeing many examples of this. So now we're going to move on to a set of examples that we're going to run directly in our demo application, and we're going to be stepping through these samples, and I have their names are A1, A2, A3 for just simply for just example numbered examples of the swing. So let me just save this, and we will move on with this example.